Epidemiologist is appealing for calm and patience. After almost 4 weeks of lockdown, the latest COVID numbers are moving in the wrong direction. There are 110 new cases, 43 were in the community while they were infectious, with another 17 for some of that time. And for the first time this outbreak, more than half the cases are unlinked to a known case or cluster. Health officials are still looking for the source of 56 of today's infections. Tonight we have reporters in the key areas. State political reporter Ashley Raper leads tonight's coverage.
A city almost deserted, businesses shut down and record high testing rates. But it's still not achieving the results Sydney is waiting for.
We've been extremely successful in limiting the spread to what we have today, but we need to work harder.
Since the start of the outbreak, it's the fourth time case numbers have hit triple digits, and only half can be linked to a known case or cluster.
Most of them eventually get linked, but there is concern that there are unlinked cases.
Of today's cases, 50 are from southwestern Sydney, while 43 of the overall cases were in the community while infectious, and a further 17 were out for part of their infectious period.
Premier, we're still working towards having 0 people infectious in the community.
Our target always is, today I spoke about that 43 number being infectious in the community. That's the number we would like to see at 0 or close to 0.
It remains the aim, but now may no longer be the benchmark for coming out of lockdown. The Premier says it could depend on where people have been while infectious.
If that number is in settings which are low risk, well, obviously we can ease restrictions.
There's no indication when that'll be, 4 weeks into lockdown.
It is a bit tricky because I've got 2 kids, so homeschooling is really killing me.
I just play computer games with my mates. That's pretty much it. Not much difference for me right now.
We're in a holding pattern. The Premier insists we haven't seen the results of the harsher lockdown. That won't come for a few days. So Gladys Berejiklian is unwilling to make a call on whether the current course of action is effective enough or whether there needs to be a change.
Yesterday you said that the green shoots are there. Today's numbers don't seem like green shoots. Was that premature?
No. The green shoots are, we have stopped what we call exponential growth. Had we not put in the measures we had, we would have had literally thousands and thousands of cases by now.
But now the restrictions are in place, many might see the measure of success is different. Ashley Raper, ABC News, Sydney.
And Ashley Raper is live for us tonight. Ashley, what are the factors that will decide when this lockdown will end?
Jeremy, based on what the Premier is saying, the goal is still to get to 0 community transmissions. Gladys Berejiklian says we can't live freely or safely unless we get on top of this outbreak, and the low vaccination rates factor into that thinking. But what that means for the length of the lockdown or ending the lockdown, that's unclear. The lockdown is locked in until Friday the 30th of July and no decisions have been made beyond that. And the Premier isn't weighing into speculation about possible scenarios, but Jeremy, she will be undoubtedly hoping, like everybody else, that over the next few days the harsher lockdown will start turning things around.
Ashley Raper reporting. Essential workers leaving Sydney are under scrutiny in the first regional lockdown of this current outbreak. 60,000 people in the state's Central West have spent their first day under stay-at-home orders after a man tested positive to coronavirus in Blaney.
As dawn broke and the lockdown set in, thousands heeded the call to get tested. Long lines of cars queued throughout the day, with locals doing their bit to try to stop the spread.
Stay calm and support each other and don't finger point.
A man who works at a Blaney pet food factory remains the only local positive case so far. He caught the virus from a Sydney delivery driver, an essential worker who's allowed to leave the Greater Sydney lockdown.
We've got to allow a level of workers to leave those areas as part of supporting the rest of the state. But if we have to do more, we will do more. But
If you look at the facts, this case wouldn't have probably eventuated if we hadn't have had that delivery driver coming to the region, and that's just the reality of it.
Public schools are open, but Orange's boarding school has closed. Parents spent the day picking up their children.
We're confident that from those QR codes and the check-ins that the person that's infected with COVID has had access to, we have the extent of those locations.
So business people are the ones that are going to be hurt the most because they don't have that regular check coming in.
Vaccination rates in regional New South Wales aren't known because the figures aren't being released. The Federal Health Authority here says the lack of supply is a major vulnerability.
We did have a period of hesitancy, but we've got past that. The problem now is people are having to wait to get their vaccine.
Community leaders are calling on the state government to establish a mass vaccination hub in Orange to provide another layer of protection from the virus. Joanna Woodburn, ABC News, Orange.
And Joanna Woodburn joins me now from Orange. Jo, police have launched a major operation there to make sure people stick to the COVID rules.
Yes, Jeremy, a local emergency management committee has been set up led by local Chief Inspector Peter Atkins, and there are also representatives from the 3 local government areas as well as welfare services and government agencies, and they'll be meeting each day virtually to keep across this lockdown. Police will also be doing high visibility patrols across the region and also conducting more compliance checks to ensure that businesses and individuals are adhering to the rules.
Joanna Woodburn in Orange. COVID has a way of constantly reminding us it knows no borders. Back in Sydney, people in the southwest have suffered the devastating impact of the disease, and it's now the western suburbs on high alert.
It doesn't get much more essential than this. But despite selling a staple, Danny Walker says he's lost almost half his business during the lockdown.
I lose many customers and restaurants about the delivery. I'm just trying to sell it now from the shop.
He says there's an anxiety in the community about how long life will be on hold.
Just feeling worried for what's happening for the next day, next week, next month.
Locals are being warned to be on high alert. The government wants more people getting tested in Cumberland, especially Marylands and Guildford. The Mayor says residents would struggle if Fairfield's strict rules were expanded to this area.
If such a restriction was to be placed upon our community, it'll absolutely cripple and hurt some families. We have families that are living week to week. They need to be out working.
There's mixed feelings on the main street in Marylands.
And if a lot of people done the right thing, like this, we'd all be happy and get it over a lot quicker and then get tested and then go get your jabs. Can't do much else about it.
It was bound to spread around at some point, so I'm definitely worried. I have a father who's high risk, so it is a worry.
Here in Guildford, you can imagine how residents might feel that it was only a matter of time until the virus spread here. I'm currently in Cumberland Council, but just up the road is the epicentre of the outbreak, the Fairfield local government area, and just across from that, Canterbury Bankstown.
Community leaders say they've been anticipating it and want a vaccine hub in the area. Kathleen Calderwood, ABC News, Sydney.
And Kathleen Calderwood joins us live now from Marylands. Kathleen, people there are being urged to get tested. How is the community responding?
Well, Jeremy, there's a short line here at Marylands Park drive-through clinic. So, look, hopefully that's a sign that people are starting to take note of that call for increased testing here in the Cumberland area. And this clinic is open until 10 p.m. if anyone still wants to come and get tested. Now, we had a reminder today that from Friday, that 3-day surveillance testing rule will be enforced for health and aged care workers who live in the Canterbury Bankstown local government area but work outside it. And the Roselands drive-through clinic is now operating 24 hours a day to cater for that increase of demand.
Kathleen Calderwood reporting. The impact of this lockdown on businesses, small and large, has been brutal. Industry leaders are worried any extension of the lockdown would be catastrophic, especially for sectors such as construction.
John Gattani is thankful for small mercies, like being allowed to work in the midst of the lockdown.
There's a huge population of tradies, and I think having them off the road is going to impact a lot of the economy, not just the construction industry.
Small changes to health orders now permit work on a property if it's to prepare it to be leased. But he fears for tens of thousands of others who are still shut down at home.
All these guys aren't spending money anymore because they're at home. So the economy, the greater economy, I think will suffer.
There's still no guarantee the strict lockdown orders won't be extended beyond next Friday.
That would be viewed as catastrophic to industry. What we'd see is probably quite a high number of companies that would fold.
There are people who will miss repayments. There are people who will not be able to pay their rent, and it's just basically going to pile up.
The construction sector is calling for a compromise to get back to the tools, like increased testing at work sites. But the spread of the Delta strain is proving difficult to control.
I think it's highly unlikely that Sydney and New South Wales in particular will be done by next Friday. I think it's likely to be a good 4 to 8 weeks more.
Epidemiologists don't see authorities opening up with vaccination rates low and a variant that spreads so quickly.
I suspect the way that this will play out is we'll have lockdown extended for a bit longer, and then when we see some improvements and the case numbers coming down, there'll be a cautious slackening, and it will be things like forming bubbles or allowing some limited amounts of people into your homes or in outdoor spaces.
More than 1,500 people have caught COVID since the outbreak began 5 weeks ago. About 94% of cases have been recorded since Sydney's been in lockdown. Josh Bavis, ABC News.
Case numbers are continuing to rise in locked down Victoria and South Australia after the Delta strain spread from Sydney. Victoria has 22 new cases. All of them are linked to known outbreaks and most were isolating. 2 of those cases were infected at a Wallabies rugby game. And South Australia's just announced 6 new cases. 5 of them were at a winery north of Adelaide. It brings the number in the SA cluster to 12.